Jonathan Graham. Thank you for coming along this afternoon. We're going to be talking about controlling quality software. How do we control the quality of our software? You may recognize me from things such as Lithuanian national TV. If this was in the morning, I'd be able to tell you the one phrase in Lithuanian that I know, but sadly it's not, so we'll carry on in English. If you've been to build stuff before, who's been to the conference before? If you were here a few years ago, you may have been at the party and I was doing the music for that, so writing music with code. Last night the bands were great and I didn't have to work, so that was nice. And if you went to the party and still managed to get up for the keynote this morning, you will have heard about MindMinds, of which I'm a co-founder. In a previous lifetime, I had less hair, I guess, and carried around flasks of coloured liquids. So I've got a science background, worked in the pharmaceutical industry for some time, and really that's where my respect for quality came about, really that understanding and that knowledge of how important quality was. So as I then moved into software, I ported across a lot of my knowledge and tried to link up how we controlled drug development into how we control software development. So some time ago, someone gave me a great piece of advice. And that was on any project you're on, any work that you're doing, make sure that you've got in your mind the story you're going to tell about it. So you should be able to go in, talk to people about it, be excited about it, find the purpose in it. So I recommend you think about that, anything you do, what is different, what can I get from this work I'm doing? How can I tell a story? So I thought, hey, why not start today with a story? Oh, that doesn't work for now. Who knows the story of the three little pigs? Is that one that? There's a few, so we'll go slowly through the story. There's three little pigs. We're going to call them Pig 1, Pig 2, and Pig 3 because that makes it easier for me to remember. Yes, terrible naming. So three little pigs. They lived happily at home with their parents. But their parents had got enough with them, eating them out of the house and making a mess everywhere. So they said, okay, it's time for you all to go, and sent them off with a pack of some food and a pocket full of cash and told them to go and make a life on their own. So off they went down the path, and Pig 1, we'll call this guy Pig 1, he came across some straw and thought, I can build a home from straw, and quickly set about fashioning a home. Made from straw, didn't cost him a lot, didn't take much time, and he spent the rest of the day enjoying himself, however Pig 1 enjoys himself. Pig 2, meanwhile, went a little bit further. He found someone who had got a lot of sticks, bought those sticks, and fashioned a pretty nice home out of the sticks. So it still didn't take all day, he still had some money left over, so he was able to enjoy the rest of the day. Pig number 3, which version should we do here? Maybe all in one day, went to school, got an architecture degree, drew up some great plans, went to construction school as well, and built, the most perfect of homes. So deep foundations, bricks, windows, the whole lot. It was a long, hard day. Used all of his money. Had no time for anything else. But, persevered through the day, and he was happy with the home at the end of the day. Oh no! You now see some part of the end of the story. So later in the day, along comes a big bad wolf. So a hungry wolf who goes first to the straw house of Pig 1 and goes, little pig, let me come in." And the pig goes, no, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin." And the wolf goes, "Well, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." So a little bit of huffing and puffing later, down goes the straw house, and either Pig 1 runs off to the other pig's home, or gets gobbled up. You choose the version of the story. It's like a play-along story. But that was Pig 1. The wolf then carries on to the stick home. Same thing, little pig, let me come in. no, 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 not by the hair on my chinny chin chin. And he huffed and he puffed and he blew that house in as well. So bye-bye pig 2. And then came along to the home of the third pig, the brick home. And the wolf tried to huff and puff his way in, but he couldn't. He couldn't get in. The pig survived, and, his brother's in there with him. So off the wolf goes, either hungry and exhausted, or in one version of the story, tries to go down the chimney and ends up being boiled alive in a bowl of boiling water. So, I don't know, children's stories can be pretty vicious at times. But anyway, the wolf didn't manage to get the pigs. So, what does this all mean about quality? Which of these homes was of the highest quality? The straw one. We can argue that case. But for the moment, let's assume it was the brick one because that was the only one that withstood the huffing and puffing of the wolf. That's where the wolf survived. That's good. We'll come on to that. It does. It looks boring. And this one is still the brick house, but it looks like a wood house, just there to confuse you, but this is the brick house. So what we're going to do, that's the original version of the story, which has withstood time and popular with parents reading to the children, because there's the accepted moral that if you work hard, if you persevere, if you try to do your best, then good things will happen in the end. Okay, so we could say that's all there is to building quality software. Get out, work hard, don't stop until everything is perfect. But we're going to look through a few other variations on this story and see whether we can tease out anything more. So imagine we have the same situation as before, so the 3 pigs left, the straw house, the stick house, the brick house. But this time, instead of there just being one wolf, there was a whole pack of hungry wolves. So they still couldn't get into the brick house. Pig number 3 survived the night. But remember, he'd spent all of his time and all of his money the previous day building the house. And in the morning, the pack of wolves is still there. And as time goes on, the grumbling in the pig's stomach is getting louder than the howling of the wolves outside. The cupboards are bare, so he's like, I've got to go. I've got to go and find some food. I've got to go and get a job, get some money, find some food. So out he runs, and, he doesn't last long before he's bacon. So, what can we learn from that variation? The pig built the house. It was built well. It withstood the wolves. It was built at the right time. It was there when the wolves came. But was it the right thing to build? In this situation, no, it didn't end up well for him. Maybe it had been better just renting a car, driving off to the city where there weren't any wolves, and making a home for himself there. So, really the first truth about software development, we need to build the right thing. Does anyone here think they could build a home in one day? Anyone? No, I know I couldn't. So let's assume that the pig couldn't either, or maybe the wolves came earlier. And the straw house was done, the stick house was done, but pig 3 was there, exposed, nothing stopping the wolf coming in. So what does the wolf do? This pig's going to be the first to go, no protection. And, maybe on this day the wolf wasn't so hungry and the other pigs survived because they were at least shielded behind their straw and their sticks. So again, you can build the right thing, you can build it in the right way, but if it's not there on time, it's going to be of little value. We need to build at the right time. One more. Is the pig in his brick home. So the same as before, and he's even tested that the house can withstand the huffing and the puffing of the wolf. He used a hairdryer to mimic it, but that's okay. So he feels secure in there. As the wolf comes, things are okay. But the wolf happens to be like all the rest of us humans and doesn't necessarily use our products in the way that we expected or the way that we built them. And instead of huffing and puffing, he came with a huge giant hammer and managed to find a weak spot in the house and knock the house down. So again, the poor pig did not survive the experience. So he was building the right thing at the right time, but in this case, not in the right way. Didn't build for all of the possible ways that the product could be used. And so that gives us these 3 pillars that we need to consider when building quality software. We need to build the right thing. There's no point us putting effort into building the wrong thing. And we need to make sure it's built on time. You know, if we take 2 years to get out some software and someone else gets it out first and we lose, you know, all market opportunity, we just wasted our time and money. And we need to build it in the right way. We need to do it in a way that's actually going to work for our users. And so depending on your team, you may have different people who are kind of responsible for each of these pillars. So building the right thing, the product owner, building at the right time, a project manager, building in the right way, you know, your lead dev, your dev team. But they've all got to work together. There'll be conflicts on what you're doing, but you need to work together and make sure those 3 things are in balance in order to ensure that we actually have quality software. So for the focus of the rest of the talk, we're going to be looking at the what is the right way, which is kind of a big topic. And so from this, what is the right way? I'm meaning, how do we build quality software? So from the dictionary, I think this was the English Oxford Dictionary, but there were 2 definitions of quality. And so we're going to look at them both in turn. Actually taking the second one first. So quality, a distinctive attribute or characteristic possessed by someone or something. Okay, and this can be useful. We can be absolute about the quality attributes, the quality measurements. So we can be absolute on the code has a high test coverage quality. You know, it possesses strong, dry qualities. You know, these metrics can be useful. There's nothing wrong with them, but it kind of forces us down that path of fitting everything to one size. So I prefer the second definition. So the standard of something is measured against other things of a similar kind, the degree of excellence of something. That's because this implies that quality is relative. So we can look at quality, just going back to the 3 pig story, you know, which is their highest quality home? What does the quality mean in this term? Well, if we're looking at being able to survive a wolf attack, the brick house was at the highest quality compared to the straw in the stick house. So we're not saying anything absolute about the quality, but compared to the straw in the stick house, it had higher quality in terms of protecting against a huffing and a puffing wolf. Oops. But what about, what can we say about the quality if the wolf comes with a big hammer? It doesn't seem so good then. So I guess the house was insufficient compared to requirements of keeping the wolf out. It was insufficient if we're thinking about the requirements of the pig surviving, because we saw if they used all this time and money to build a house, didn't have their tight, you know, there was a lost opportunities for getting food, for example. And we had the comments about the house looks boring. So maybe the pig expected a grand palace and got just some bare structure. So the pig's thinking, okay, the quality of this house is awful, right? It's not what I expected, even though it met what we thought were the requirements. So it's always relative, either compared to other things, compared to requirements, compared to expectations. And trying to just keep that in mind, relative rather than absolute, I think it makes it a lot clearer about what we mean when we talk about quality. We're just going to look at another more real-life example. So imagine there's a new drug that's come to market. this is a wonder drug, it's going to cure your every illness. How do you feel about the quality of this drug? So I'll give you two scenarios. One, you've got a terminal disease. You've been told you've only got, a few months to live. You hear about this drug. You hear that there is a risk that you will get heart failure from taking the drug. So there's a risk associated with taking it, but it's going to cure, your disease. How do you feel about it? The benefit is pretty good, right? You get the benefit of you're going to survive. You've got a risk that you're going to get heart failure. So, it may not be great, but at least the benefit, in this case, outweighs the risk. If you had, occasional headaches, mild asthma, something that isn't impacting you too much, what do we think about the quality of the drug then? The benefit is, not so great compared to the risk of getting heart failure. Okay, I'll cope with a headache once a month if I'm not going to have the risk of getting heart failure. So it really comes down to quality, how we think about quality as being that ratio between the benefits that we get and the risks that we take. So we want is, the greater benefit that we can for the risks. The higher the benefits compared to the risks, the higher the quality. And this is really quite nice because we can move away from that abstract thinking of quality to some concrete terms. We can determine what are the benefits of what we're delivering, what we're making, what we're doing. And we can quantify and we can look at what the risks are. And so we can start looking in concrete terms about what we actually mean about quality. So we're just going to plot simply where we want to be in terms of the amount of controls that we put in compared to this risk-benefit profile. So we're looking as the amount of risk compared to the benefit increases on the x-axis and on the y, the amount of controls that we're putting into our system. So where in this chart do we want to be? If we're down here with the Grim Reaper, we're in a position where there's a lot of risk compared to the benefits, and we haven't got a lot of control. We're putting our users at risk. If it's in the case of a healthcare product, if it's in the case of sending a rocket to Mars, we can have catastrophic impacts on our user if we haven't got the appropriate controls in. But if we go all the way to, okay, we're going to put lots of controls in, even though the risks aren't that high compared to the benefits, we're going to be spending a lot of time and a lot of money, and ultimately, we're never really going to be able to deliver anything because we're spending all that time making sure things are perfect, even though the risks don't justify it. So really, we need to be in this kind of zone somewhere in the middle where we've got the appropriate amount of controls for the risks and the benefits on the product in order to make sure that we can deliver for our users and protect them from harm. So we're going to now think about, what are risks, what are the risks, how can we quantify those, what are the benefits, what are the controls that we can apply, and then we can see, are we in the right place? Are we choosing the right controls at the right time, given our, our current risk-benefit profile on the work that we're doing? So we're going to start. We're going to start by looking at some of the controls, and for the moment, we're going to be looking at some technical controls, so some tools and techniques that we can use. I'm going to put them up the y-axis. There's not going to be an exhaustive list, so don't be mad at me if I've not included things. Don't get hung up on the order that we're putting things up. That will move around. It's just to give some sort of an indication. So what are the types of controls that we have? Well, we write some software. If it compiles, at least we know we've got something that's going to at least build, right? At least run. So it's going to give us some control, but not so much. So moving on from there, we can do manual tests. And I've put it down at the bottom. For the moment, we're saying that there's there's not so much control, so it would work well if the risks aren't too high, but that's not necessarily the case. You can have a full suite of manual tests, make sure everything's covered. You can spend, an enormous amount of time and money to make sure that things are working. That's probably not going to be the most efficient use of all your time, but you could get in plenty of controls for the risks that you've got. But generally, we're going to miss things. It's going to take time. We're not going to cover everything that we need. We can do logging, so when that product's out in the wild, we can find out what's happening to it and get information back. So it's kind of after the event, but we can use it to get information about our system and then build up the control. Obviously useful. Will it protect our customers from harm? Not necessarily if it's there at the end, but if it's something that we've been doing over time, then sure. Unit tests. So looking at the individual components of the system, plenty of definitions out there. The unit tests all over the place. So we're going to get control in how much? How many unit tests do you need to write? Basically, any number is the wrong number, right? It's going to depend on the system. It's going to depend what you need. And you can write more and more to make sure you've got the coverage. You've got the cost of maintaining it as well. Will you ever have everything covered? Probably not, right? But it is going to demonstrate correctness of your code in the ways that you've been thinking about building the system. So that's going to provide plenty of control, and if our risks aren't huge compared to the benefits, then we're in a pretty good place. And we can carry on. Anyone doing property-based testing? Yeah, a couple of hands. So this is where instead of with a unit test, we're looking at, we're putting in specific values and expecting specific things back when we're testing our code. This is looking at what is the behavior of our code. How do we expect the behavior? How do we expect our code to behave given all of the possible inputs into it? So so if we're just got an addition function, we're taking a couple of numbers. We could say, start it, we pass in 0 and 0, we're going to get 0 add 0 is 0, and then carry on and try to cover some edge cases and go on. Or we could say we're going to generate a whole load of possible inputs of the two, pass them in, and we always expect some behaviors, like the sum is going to be at equal or greater than the two components going in. So no matter what the inputs, we're going to be able to say things about the result. And it can be particularly useful when we're looking at things like, when we're looking at refactoring, when we want the code that we're testing to behave the same as it was. And that includes any of the things that we didn't really plan for the code to do. So we want the same behavior so that we can have the true refactor rather than changing the implementation. Sorry, changing the output. Moving on with integration tests, so looking at where the different components come in. Again, somewhere that is going to often be a pain point, and somewhere that we want to make sure that we've got the good test coverage on. If we go and get explicit feedback, go and speak to our users about the software, see how they use it, we can find out, what are the issues with how the system works, and look at what we can do in order to implement more controls to make sure that things are working as they expect. So in a slightly different way, you heard Russ Miles yesterday talking about chaos engineering. So if we randomly put in failure points and see what happens, we're going to learn about our system and find out where we want to put in those extra controls and to ensure that we are not putting our users at risk. A/B testing. So again, I like this from a science background, rather than seeing how the users use it, or say, we've got some new features, we're going to put them out in the wild and see what happens. We're going to actually do a controlled experiment and see how users interact with the two versions. And it also has the added benefit that if one pathway for some reason goes down, you've got another one that you could always fall back on. Type systems give us that extra layer of control in terms of what are our inputs to the system, so we don't necessarily have to worry about some of the inputs in the same way that we do if we don't have the type system. And we can move all the way on to formal proofs. Anyone doing formal proofs on a regular basis? Anyone doing formal proofs ever? Yeah, awesome. So we could, I guess, talk for a long time on that, and I would not expect anyone to go away tomorrow and start putting formal proofs in the code unless they happen to need it. But we can go all the way. So there's a huge spectrum of things. We are not going to want to do everything all the time. We're going to be wanting to do different things at different times. But if you've not experimented or looked at any of these things, then it's worth doing. So we know what are the things that we can draw on, what are the tools that we can use in order to make sure we are delivering what we want. Make sure that we're in this green zone. So some of the options that we've got to control our quality. So how do we then know which ones to choose at what point? So we need the appropriate ones given that benefit and risk profile. So what are the benefits? I said earlier that when you're doing work, always think about the story that you can tell about it. So what is it that you're building? What are the benefits of what you are doing? Ideally, you'll want to have a version that fits in an elevator so you can nice and concisely say, yeah, these are the benefits of what I'm doing today, this week, this project. What are the benefits of coming to this conference? So let's just move away from software for a moment. You all made a choice to come to this conference. I presume you all came because you thought there'd be some benefits. What were some of the benefits?
Meeting old colleagues.
Meeting old colleagues. Cool, definitely.
Have fun.
Having fun, absolutely.
Gaining inspiration.
Gaining inspiration. Learning new things. Serendipity. Yep. You accidentally came into this talk. Cool, so there's a whole load of reasons, and we often don't explicitly think about it, but being able to clearly express what are the benefits of what we are doing helps us weigh up whether the risks associated are worth it. So benefits of coming today, a whole lot. So what were the risks? What are some risks associated with a conference? So does anyone explicitly do risk assessments? Does anyone hate the idea of risk assessments? Has anyone spent hours and hours in a room trying to do risk assessments? No? Okay, you're all lucky, I have. Sometimes they're horrible, but they can be really, really useful. So, in order to think about how we're going to control quality, think about the benefits, we need to be able to clearly understand the risks. So we're going to go over some in a particular format to make sure that we can be clear in expressing and comparing the risks. If you ever ask anyone, normally, what are the risks in your project, you leave it open-ended, you sometimes get 5-10 minutes just rambling on, and it's like, I don't understand. So if you want to talk about the risks with other people on the project, particularly technical risks with non-technical people, having some format that you always use can be really useful. So we're going to do it in this way. We're going to say, because of some cause, there is a risk that some event resulting in a consequence. So because of some cause, there's a risk that something will happen which will result in a consequence. We're going to start off looking at this with the example of coming to the conference, and then we'll look at how it relates to software. So we're going to, for each of the risk statements we do, we're going to look at three things. We're going to look at how likely it is that that event will occur. We're going to look at the impact. So what is the impact if that event does occur? So if the consequence is realized. And we're going to look at the detection. So when will we find out if something's gone wrong, basically, and be able to do something about it? So this last bit is often easy to forget. When do we find out that something's wrong and can do something to rectify it? So we're going to look at those three things for each of the risks. And we're going to score them. And we're going to score each of them either a 1, a 4, a 7, or a 10. So the reason for this is have less groups rather than 1 to 10. We want to be less granular so that we don't spend forever debating whether something is a 4 or a 5. It doesn't matter so much. We want that feel relative to other things, what sort of a score it is. And rather than just being 1, 2, 3, 4, having the difference means that as we multiply the scores, we see a big range of outputs. So it makes it much easier to identify what are the high risks to our project. So what we put in here, how we score, we need to make sure that we're consistent across the project we're on. But depending on the type of project, depending on the type of work we're doing, we may well have different criteria for the different scores. So likelihood, we're going to look at it's very low, or it's never been seen before. 4 if it's low, something that occurs infrequently. So whether on your project or on related projects, 7 if it occurs occasionally, 10 if it occurs often. So as you're actually implementing this, you may want to put some more details around it, but it's just that idea of, how likely is the event to occur. The impact. These I just put in for, what is the impact on you if we have some risks that impact the conference? So I'm going to say you score 1 if you still, something happens, you still enjoy the conference, but you don't really learn anything. I don't know, coming up with these should be a team effort, and I just came up with something, so we can see how well this works. A 4 if we learn a bit, 7 if we learn nothing, and 10 if we learn nothing and we destroy our reputation. But we could have any combination of these things. We could be, we learn nothing, we have a miserable time, and we don't meet anyone. Hopefully you get the idea. And when we're looking on projects, this may be in terms of delays, extra resource that's required or money, that sort of thing. And then detection, we're going to just keep this as things that risk your enjoyment of the conference today. So will you detect it and be able to do something about it? First thing in the morning, an hour before, during a talk, after the talk. Okay, so there's going to be these criteria that we're scoring on. So here's a first risk. I'm going to blame the bill stuff party. So because of the bill stuff party, there is a risk that I'll be really tired. This is you coming to the conference. There's a risk that you'll be really tired and resulting in difficulty concentrating. Does this ring a bell for anyone? I feel sure that we've all been there at some point. Oh. I missed my scoring. Anyway, let's just go back. So let's think about the likelihood of this happening. The likelihood that you're going to be really tired because of the bill stuff party. So think back to other times that you've been in a conference and you've been out. How likely is it that you'll come to the conference on the third day and be tired? 10 or higher, yeah. It's, maybe for you the score's lower, so whatever it is. Does that occur infrequently or frequently? What is the impact? What's the impact of coming here if you're really tired? yeah, you may gain nothing. You hear things, but you can't take it in, you can't concentrate. And what is the detection? When are you going to realize that you've been out half the night and you're really tired? Sorry? Maybe at the end, when you get up. So I'm going to put some assumptions in. So if it had shown up, you see some notes with it. So where we are. So I'm going to say that, yep, this has happened before. So we've got a high likelihood. But that also there is a wonderful espresso bar next to my hotel, so I know that I can get coffee. So we may have, that's annoying, sorry. Let's just look at it here. They're being really tired. So I said likelihood of 10. I know that by the third day I'm going to be really tired. The impact, I put fairly low because I knew that I'd be able to drink coffee and be able to keep going. It's not going to be too terrible. The detection, I'm going to say it's at the start of the day. I know I've got people who are going to make sure I'm up. Can I do something about it? Yeah. I can go and drink coffee all day and make sure I'm alert enough to enjoy the conference. Does that make some sense? Sorry. Let's go back. So another one. We've got the same cause. So you can look at different risks associated with the same cause. So again, having the party last night, it's the third day of the conference. There's a risk that I'll oversleep, resulting in missing the opening keynote. Does anyone want to admit to that? No hands. That's awesome. So what's the likelihood of this happening? I know that there are people who have missed an opening session the night after a party, so it definitely occurs. So there's some score there. The impact, so I'm saying in this situation, to give it a 10, I'm traveling with my boss, and they expect me to be there, and I'm not, and I slept through and I missed it all. It's going to be pretty bad, so a high impact. When am I going to detect it? Well, when I wake up after I've missed it, there's nothing I can do about it. So this then ends up having higher scores than the other. And what we do, so normally see this in some sort of sheet, just multiply the three things, and we get the prioritized risk number. So we get a feel for the magnitude of the risk. So we can see two different risks, but they're very different score. So what we can do, we just had two there. Often we'll have lots and lots of risks, and sometimes people will want to go into a lot of detail about how we can mitigate some of the risks. But if we go along all of them, we're going to take forever, spend a lot of money. If we don't do anything about any of them, if we do that, we're going to sit in meetings all day and never do anything, and it'll be terrible. If we do nothing, though, we're going to end up potentially harming our users. So what we want to do is focus on the key risks. And it's amazing how often you'll find that the really big risks are ones that you hadn't really thought were that big. You can spend an awful lot of time thinking and worrying about things that are really not so important. So just when you do this, order them by the highest PRN and start focusing on there and start coming up with the mitigation plans. So how are we going to mitigate against missing the opening keynote? Any thoughts? You all arrived this morning. What did you do to make sure that you arrived? So? Multiple alarms. Or get a friend to call. So have those things. I put in be Cinderella, leave at 12. We can say that. We can say no to shots. We don't have to drink, and that's going to help us get up. So we can look at those, and then this is going to be an iterative cycle. So we identified risks and we scored them. We started putting in place some mitigation plans for those highest risks. When we put those in place, the score should come down, otherwise we've just been wasting our time. So then we relook at it, we rescore it, and work through again from the top. So we're always working through on the highest risks. Let's just quickly look at a couple of examples with more real life. So because of relying on a third-party API, what's going to happen? There's a risk that the API will change, resulting in interrupted service. It's never happened, right? So we'll use different scoring mechanism, but is this something that's likely to happen? What will the impact be on you if it does? So whether it's time, money, reputation, the whole lot. And when will you detect it? So maybe if it's it's a reputable third party and they give you lots of advance warning and you can make sure everything's in, you know it ahead of time, there's the load detection. If suddenly it's shut off and you don't know, and the first time you know is when production's down, it's going to be a higher score. So we can start looking at this and making sure we've got some mitigation plans in to avoid suffering because of it. Just another example, because of extending legacy code, which has got high code toxicity, there's a risk that as we make changes, unrelated parts will break, resulting, in some sort of code failure. So again, we can look at, in our system, how likely is this, what's the impact, when will we know that this has happened, and make sure that we're doing things in a way that's going to minimize the harm to our users. Here's a risk. Because risk assessments are difficult and can be perceived as being difficult, there's a risk that we will not assess the risks properly, resulting in unforeseen consequences. So do not go and just try to do a whole lot of risk assessments on your own. It's definitely a team thing. It's really about having that conversation, sharing the understanding, and making sure that you're concentrating in the areas that we need to. Have an outside facilitator if you can, someone from outside of the team to make sure that things are kept on track. It is so easy to get stuck in detail for a long time on, just what score something should be, or looking at how we're going to deal with something when, that's not really the initial part of the risk assessment. So, if you can have someone else in to facilitate, then do that. And also, don't start getting stuck on risks that are outside of your control and elsewhere. So someone once said, well, we don't know that the sun's going to come up in the morning. It's like, well, we can argue about that, but even if we could, if suddenly there was no sun, there's more important things going on than, our code, to be fair. So, and it's the same with anything. What's the risk? For most of us, what's the risk of there being a fire taking out the building? There's other people worrying about that. If that happens, again, there's bigger things for us to worry about. So just focus on the things that we can actually control. So we looked at some of the controls we can put in, looked at being clear and transparent about the benefits that we're looking for and the risks that we've got, so that we can start looking then at, in the mitigations, what controls do we want to put in to make sure that things are happening. But it's not just technical controls that we need to think about when we're looking at controlling quality. So I just want to pose one other definition for quality, and that is that the quality of a product is determined by the level of respect for its users. Okay, so if we've got a product and it harms our users, losing them time, money, whatever, we're not respecting them. We're saying, use it, we don't care what happens to you. So if we've got a quality product, we're going to be respecting our users. I want to just expand on that. This is Mel Conway. Who was here 2 years ago and saw Mel Conway talk here? Yeah, a few people. So he has a law. Apparently it feels great having a law named after you. His law is any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. So that idea that how we're structured as an organization is going to determine how the structure of our code is going to be. So I wanted to see, can this relate further into quality? So if quality can be related to the level of respect for the users, can we say an organization will produce a product whose quality, whose respect for its users is a mimic of the quality of the organization's culture, so the respect for everyone who works there. So ultimately, we're saying an organization will produce higher quality software if its employees feel respected. So if that's true, what do we mean about that? A huge topic in its own, so I'm just going to quickly cover on some of it. But allowing the whole self of everyone to be there. So you're not just, I am me at work and I'm someone else elsewhere. You know, I am me as a whole, and I'm going to take my experiences from elsewhere, and I'm going to bring that in and use that in order to help us work as a team and learn new things. So being a person rather than, you know, the role. We need to assume that everyone is doing the very best that they can, given the situation that they're in. You know, if we're in a good place, no one's going to deliberately do something that's not good. So if that happens, be able to mentor and help people grow, not have people worried about sharing what they've got. So, you know, bugs hide in dark places, right? If you don't feel comfortable in showing your code because people are going to judge you, then that code won't get reviewed, people won't learn, and we'll have lower quality software. Who has flexibility in their working hours? Awesome, quite a lot. So I don't know how you feel. If I can work when I feel like I'm going to be productive working, I'm going to do better work. So at My Minds, we implemented a 5-hour workday so that we're on, you know, where we can, client work for 5 hours. The rest of the time, we can be doing self-development work and learning and bringing that back into the team. And that's great. Everyone learns, brings new stuff. And that's just one example of having that flexibility, treating people with respect so they can then treat the users with respect. Who feels pressured the whole time to just be delivering? There's a few. How does that make you feel? Important. That's great. That's perfect. Then it works for you. I don't like it. I like to be able to go for walks and think. I like to not be sat at a desk for more than about 20 minutes and just go off and let my head think. Have that, sorry, I didn't come up. Have that creative time in order to work through problems without the feel that needing to deliver all the time. Have the time to experiment. And to have everyone's view is important, whether you've just joined, you know, junior dev, or whether, you know, you've been in the industry for years. The way that you think about things, the way that you engage with everyone else in the team is going to be valuable. Being able to challenge that norm. If you feel in a position where you've got to do things in a certain way, you are probably not going to end up with the best quality software. And I'm just going to finish with this. Quality, delivering quality software, is the responsibility of every single person. You cannot think someone else is going to take care of it. If something breaks, the user doesn't care, you know, what else was in place, who did what. It's going to impact everyone. It's going to impact your organization. Everyone has a responsibility to think about it, to challenge how things are done, and to make sure that we are not putting our users at risk. Thank you all for coming today. It's been great seeing you all. Thank you. And I think there's some time for questions if anyone's got any. I see a question. I didn't say explicitly, but there should be no dogma. If anyone tells you you should be doing things in a certain way, that's really you should be able to challenge the norm. So there's a lot of advantages of TDD. It can work well. Is it what you should be doing at all times? Does it feel right for you? Not necessarily. So yeah, if you're told to do something always in one way, that may not be the best way to do it as you're working. Any other questions?
How do you plan your day? Like, I mean, like, I wake up and you think, like, I will be, like, doing this, like, so I will deliver something, then I will take a walk and have my visionaire for 3 hours.
So how do you plan your day when you can be flexible away from the desk? I guess with communication. So there are times when you have to be together as a team and working together. And if that's going, if you're pairing or mobbing together and it's working, you're going to want to be together in one place. You've got meetings with a client, you probably don't want to tell them, oh, hang on, I'm taking a walk during that point. So, you have to be pragmatic about it. Sometimes you have to be in the office all day, and that's just it. But if you think about your work as, being your whole self, and you're going to do it as it works for you, then you can just move things around to suit your needs. So it's a different way of thinking about things, and it's anything like that takes time to figure out a way that works well.
When talking about risk assessment, you mentioned that evaluating the risks that are not your responsibility is not needed. Yeah? But then you went to a point in the end that everyone should care about the quality. So I don't know. I think everyone got to a moment when somebody thought that another team or another group or another one would think about
Yep.
something
I think that's
wrong happened, and in the end, everyone just forgot about it.
I think that's a great point. So if guys said, don't worry about the risks out of your control, and the point was, well, how do we know that it's not being picked up by someone else? We have a responsibility for making sure that it is covered. So yes, you're absolutely right. We don't want to spend time going into the details of it, but we should be aware that there is a process where that will be picked up. So yeah, don't spend, the last thing that you want is every team in a big organization to be coming up with risk mitigation plans for if, suddenly there's, I don't know, flooding all around the building and no one can get out. It's not the point of the time. But yes, things like that may need to be considered at some point. So making sure that there are systems in place, but not going into the details of it. Does that?
Talking about this risk assessment, and is this how you ensure product quality despite short deadlines? So when you have points and you have your list of risks and you know which ones are important, does this help already? Arguing against short deadlines?
Yeah, exactly. So being able to communicate clearly what the risks are and be able to show what the impact of that is I find the best way for being able to communicate to your clients, whoever that is, on trying to push back on timelines or negotiating on scope. It's like, this is the risk if we don't do these things. If it's something that you don't feel like it would be unethical for you to do, and it's the client's choice not to do it, and they're accepting a risk, then you have that choice. But if it's something that's like, no, if we do that, I'm not putting my name to it. It's the conversation point. It's a way of bringing clear language, I guess, and quantitative analysis to what we do in tech. So communication, yeah, a huge part of it. Hi.
Do you have a similar approach for the benefits? Because when you want to check one thing back into the other, you need like another approach for the other side.
So generally, not as rigorously. Overall, looking at what the benefits are in terms of maybe trying to put numbers on it, what are the financial benefits or anything else of delivering a feature. So yes, that will be there somewhere. And at some point, if you're, absolutely, you need to understand that if you're looking at, okay, we're gonna put formal proofs on everything, and it's gonna take a 50-person team 2 years to do. That's gonna cost a certain amount. Is it worth it? So yeah, it means that we can do things with some absolutes rather than just guessing. So yeah, structure-wise, not quite the same, but yeah, cool. Well, I think we're out of time. So thank you all. You can catch me on Twitter or email me if you've got any other questions. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.